I've watched a lot of birth stories on YouTube, but I have never ever heard anyone say in their birth story that they went backwards during their labour. The most horrific thing I have ever experienced in my life. If you'd asked me like even a day before, would you consider the epidural, I would have said absolutely not. I'm not having a massive needle stuck inside. Right, there's going to be lots of people coming into the room now, but don't panic, don't worry. And his voice is like shaking. Assalamu alaikum. Oh gosh, it's been such a long time since I've sat in front of my big camera. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore. I am going to be 14 weeks postpartum in 2 days, inshallah. Thought this was a good time to film my birth story. It did take me a while to process it. I honestly think I am still processing it. I really did want to have a debrief done with a midwife, but no one's got back to me at this point in time. I'm inshallah going away for Umrah in a week and a bit. While things were still semi-fresh in my mind, I wanted to sit down and film it and talk about it. I have already posted this on TikTok. Although my birth was very far from what I wanted it to be and completely off the birth plan, the main thing that I want to start with is just, giving thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Firstly, no human being is tested beyond what they can bear, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows our limit so much more than we do. Everything happens for a reason. As cliche as it is true. Like, as Muslims, we believe in the qadr of Allah, so it happened how it was supposed to happen. And the third thing is, how can I not be grateful that despite having the birth that I did and going through the experience I did, I am now out my 4th trimester and alhamdulillah healthy. If I had told myself this even 10 weeks ago when I was a month postpartum, how I'd be feeling physically, mentally, etc., I don't think I would have believed myself. So yeah, alhamdulillah, it's only because of the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and kindness as well. It's truly life-changing, and for me personally, my birth experience was akin to when, the saying goes that when a woman gives birth, she walks through the valley of death. It was not easy. So it's not going to be a short video by any means. I want to give it the detail it deserves because it was a monumental part of my life. I need to rewind back to the end of my pregnancy. I had a feeling that I was going to go over, only because my pregnancy, as far as my mum could remember, like the symptoms that she had, I pretty much had a very similar pregnancy to her. So I had a feeling that since all 4 of her children were 8, 9 or 10 days overdue, that my baby was also going to be overdue. And I kind of said this from the start, needing to go to the toilet all the time and not sleeping properly at all. That last month of sleep during pregnancy was horrendous. I also gained the most weight in my whole pregnancy in that last month than I had before, and I also only got stretch marks in that last month because I was literally stretched to the limit. Another thing that I need to mention for the birth story to kind of make sense, for some bizarre reason, every single Friday for the last 4 weeks of my pregnancy, I had an hour in each Friday where I felt like I couldn't feel her move. Further along your pregnancy you get towards the end, the more they talk to you about the risks of having a stillbirth. That was constant in the back of my mind. There's so much mental pressure when you are pregnant because you as a pregnant person are supposed to somehow magically know like exactly what's going on, even though like sadly we do not have an x-ray into our bellies and we can't see what's going on, but you're supposed to know. And I found that really stressful. Obviously, as soon as I felt like I wasn't feeling her move, I would call the triage. They would ask me to come in, they would hook me up to the monitor, and alhamdulillah, obviously she was fine. It was very, very scary in the moment. And the second time this happened, I was around 39 weeks. Because this was the second time in 2 weeks that it happened, they were going to speak to a doctor, and when the doctor eventually came, she said, I recommend that we book you in for an induction date next week. And I was just like, absolutely not, I'm 39 weeks, I do not want to be induced. I never wanted to be induced. I only heard negative things about inductions. I've only heard that they make the contractions a lot more painful than if you are not induced. I had very few positive induction stories. If you do have one, please let me know down below. But I was absolutely not game for being induced at 39 weeks, and I explained to her, I was like, listen, my mum, all her babies went over, and alhamdulillah, we're fine. So no, I'm not comfortable with being induced. And that's one thing that I had learnt during a hypnobirthing course that I did. I did 2 hypnobirthing courses. She did say to me, well, that's fine, but we have now advised you there is greater risk of your baby being born stillborn, which is horrendous to hear, honestly. Like, no one wants to hear that. Anyway, again, like I said, the following Friday I went in, and again, because I couldn't feel her move and she was fine, alhamdulillah. Obviously at this point I was 40 weeks, and my midwife had agreed with me in terms of like not wanting to be induced. She was like, absolutely, you have had a green, smooth sailing pregnancy for the most part up until this point, so unless you are really wanting to get the baby out yourself, I'm glad that you were assertive and said no, I don't want that. She's like, you still got time. A due date is just a due date. It's 4% of chance that your baby's going to come on that date, but you know, it's not a solid date to work towards, even though like when you are expecting, that is what you're thinking about constantly, is that date. And for us, our due date was the date before our anniversary. I actually ended up getting mild contraction, like early pregnancy predormal symptoms on the 16th of December. I was on the phone to my mum. I was like, oh, I can feel like a bit of a cramping sensation. And then we carried on talking, and then like minutes later there was another one, and my mum was like, sounds a bit like a contraction. And I genuinely didn't think that contraction could feel like a cramp, but obviously every woman is so different and every woman's experience will be different. But yes, your contractions can feel like period cramps essentially, and only can be felt in that area, which blew my mind. I really thought that I'd be feeling the contractions at the top of the bump or the middle of the bump. My contractions, which I found out later on as well, really were stemming mostly in the area where you feel period cramps. So yeah, essentially I was in very early labour from the 16th of December, and my baby was 11 days overdue. So I had a rough end, like middle to end of the month. Basically in the UK, you cannot get to 42 weeks without being induced, because they say here that if you get past 42 weeks, your placenta starts deteriorating and causes significant risk and harm to the baby. That is obviously different across the world. Like I've heard of mothers who have got to 42 plus 2 or 42 plus 4 and the baby's just come like without being induced, but that is the policy that they have here in the UK. At 40 weeks plus 5 days, she said, right, we now need to be open to the idea that baby might not come in the next week, so we do need to book in a date for induction. And she had booked me in for the 2nd of January. I was eating all the dates. I was drinking so much raspberry leaf tea. I was doing a lot of the things that they say that could help labour to come along, and obviously I was having mild cramping and things, but unfortunately it wasn't bleeding into anything. So I had my induction booked in for the 2nd. She had offered me at this point a sweep, but she was like, sometimes what can happen is that the opposite effect can happen. So you can have a sweep and it can just cause a lot of discomfort and pain. She's like, if you're already having cramping, it's up to you, but it could just cause more discomfort and actually not help the labour to progress. And then sadly 41 weeks came and there was still nothing. So I had gone in for just a checkup. I remember I went in to then have a sweep done. Let's have a sweep done, let's see if that gets me anywhere, and let's also see if I am dilated at all. So this midwife checked me, and she did the sweep and she checked, and by the way, the checking process was so much more painful than I could have expected. I spoke to one lady before who had given birth recently, and she said the same thing. She said that the being checked was so painful. I hadn't heard that as a regular thing. A lot of people, you know, when I hear their birth stories, they're like, yeah, so then the midwife checked me, and they don't talk about how painful it is. So maybe it's not painful for everyone. Let me know down below if that was painful for you. For me, it really hurt. It was very uncomfortable, and it shocked me how much it was quite painful. Anyway, she found out at this point, 28th of December at this point, she said to me, right, the good news is that you are 2 centimeters dilated. Also, it's great to feel that your cervix is soft and open. So she was like, that means that your body is doing what it needs to do. However, because we are so close to the end, I'm going to book you in for an induction for the next day. And she didn't ask me, she just said, I'm going to book it because you already have been advised by a doctor and you're right near the end now anyway, so I'm going to book. I personally, again, was really trying to avoid induction at any cost, and to hear that my body had got to 2 centimeters at this point, and to hear that my cervix was open, I got home and I thought about it, and I was actually, no, I'm going to phone up again the hospital and I'm going to say I don't want my induction, I don't want an induction the next day, I just want to give my body one last chance. So this was the triage and then the labour suites kind of staff who gave me this advice and booked me in, and I called up the midwifery unit side of things, which is this is 2 different departments in the hospital, and I explained what happened, and I said, listen, if I'm already 2 centimeters dilated, I just want to give my body the chance. Like, I've done a lot of mental work and this sort of stuff with birth and around birth. I just want to give my body a chance without having to go through an induction process. And they agreed with me, so they were like, right, we'll call through to the labour ward and cancel your induction for you and just keep us posted. But also she was like, but it'd be great if you could come in the next day. What we'll try and do is aromatherapy, and we'll give you an aromatherapeutic massage and blah blah blah, and like hopefully that'll get things going. And midwifery unit is very, very, very different to the labour suite side of things. Essentially, we went to the midwifery unit at 36 weeks, me and Mugar. We toured it. We felt like it was like a 5-star secret unlocked part of the hospital that we had no idea about. That's where they had the birthing, water birthing option, all the rooms had like these massive pillows on the floor, beautiful starry lamps in the sky. They just didn't look like a hospital setup. For me, like a hospital setting is going to cause a bit of anxiety because I'm scared of needles, and the idea of having like a cannula in my arm or an IV drip or anything like that is just like my worst nightmare. So that environment, we were just like, yes, this is amazing. And because, like I said before, my pregnancy up to this point had been a green stage pregnancy, my midwife was like, yeah, absolutely, like as long as your labour starts naturally by itself, you will be able to access the midwifery unit. So this is what we both really wanted. Went in the next evening, and I didn't feel like there was a lot of difference, to be honest, with my intensity of the cramps. It just felt like mild period cramps, and there was no rhyme, rhythm or reason to them at all. They just came and went. And on that day as well, I should mention that my mum arrived, alhamdulillah, came on the train on the 29th of December, and I went in on that day, like I said, in the hospital, and the midwife in the midwifery unit, she'd had like the concoction of aromatherapy oils all prepared, and she was like, what I'm going to do is just ask you to just lie down there, and I'm just going to check you over, and if you want me to do another sweep, I can. And oh my goodness, guys, when she checked me, it was one of the most painful things in my life. It was so painful. My eyes like instantly filled with tears, and I was like, please stop. Like, it was horrible. It was, I could not believe how painful it was. And she was really being so, I felt like it was very, very invasive and properly like digging around to see what was going on. But it was just, honestly, I still cannot believe that in 2023, 2024, there is not a machine or a scanning device or something that can show how dilated women are. Like, I cannot believe what an invasive and painful process it is. That is one of the things that truly shocked me about labour and delivery. And I was like, please stop, like it's too much. And she did, and she was like, I'm really sorry, but I've got some bad news. Like, you are still 2 centimeters dilated. I would agree with the midwife the day before. However, she said, and your notes say your cervix is soft and open, but it's absolutely not. So I'm going to put a diagram on the screen here of like what a favourable cervix should be. Like I had was unfavourable, which is hard and narrow and pointing the other way, and essentially as your body getting into this process, your cervix is supposed to be like going that way and opening up and getting ready for the baby to exit. She was like, because this is what I found, there is no way that the baby's going to come out anytime by itself in the next 2 or 3 days. So what I would recommend is you would bring your induction forward. We were running out of time at this point. She then called 2 doctors in to give their opinion, and I was like, I don't mind having doctors in, but I do not want to be examined again. I'm still in pain from my last examination, and please, like, make sure that they don't touch me because I'm in a lot of pain, and it was just horrible. It was a horrible feeling. Anyway, doctors came in. The same doctor who at 39 weeks has said, like, you should be induced, which was great. And she was like, yes, I see. Like I said, I think induction is definitely what we need now to do. And I was like, okay. Did I educate myself on the things that I didn't want to happen? No. I very, very, very much focused on only positive birth stories and hypnobirthing and water births and breathing techniques. And alhamdulillah, I had the breathing nativity. I will toot my own trumpet and say that's the case, but I was so silly, guys. I did not look into C-sections or emergency C-sections, induction, the process of induction, the types of induction that can happen, the risks and the pros and cons of induction. And I can't believe I was like so ignorant and naive to do that. I actually cringe at myself thinking back to it now. Hindsight is a beautiful thing, and I wish I had just been a lot more clued up on all those things, especially regarding induction, because clearly at this point in my birth story, I had no choice but to be induced. I had gone on YouTube and gone through every single "this video will help you to induce labour naturally" video there is possible. I was making lots of dua as well, but like it just wasn't happening. She was clearly too cozy in there, and it just was not happening. I had to accept that that was my fate, right? So there's 2 types of induction. There's chemical induction. I don't know the full process, to be really honest. And there's the natural induction. It's not natural at all. The fully balloon induction. This is what I had done because I was already contracting. Balloon induction, which should get you to a 3 centimeters dilated, and then the contraction should just roll from then. But it sounded like the best of a bad situation kind of thing. So I was like, okay, fine. 10 a.m. the next day, I was booked in. They put in a balloon. They filled the balloon up with a solution, and then you had something hanging out of you for what they said was up to 24 hours. Very uncomfortable. It was not fun at all. It caused a lot of discomfort. I'm just very grateful that my balloon catheter only stayed there for 12 hours. Around 10:30 that evening, it fell out by itself. But in between that time of having it put in, I didn't notice anything for like the first 2 hours, and then after that, the cramping became a lot more. A regular period, I would say, like whereas before was like light cramping, light sensations. This was like oh, okay, right, it feels like I'm on my period, and it's just not comfortable. And you have this thing hanging out of you, and you're very heavy. You're heavy anyway. You're 41 plus 4 days pregnant at this point, and then you got this thing coming out of you. It's horrible. A guy ran a bath with me. My mum was here. She was making lasagna. We tried to like have a lovely evening as much as we could, and I was trying to be positive and trying to think, right, this is what needs to be done. We even watched my Belima film, which genuinely I feel like that did actually help, because that's the last thing that we did before we went to bed. Me, mum, and Wakaya, we were having ice cream and watching the Belima film, and it was so wholesome to do that because I hadn't watched that film in so long. The balloon capita thing came out by itself. It was a very gory situation, but I was obviously thrilled that it come out. We called the triage. They were like, brilliant, hopefully in the next like couple of hours your contractions should start. You need to be timing them, and when they do like become consistent, then call us back in. I was in the shower, and I remember they were getting like a little bit more intense, and I think we called them again. And I just remember at one point, like, I had this phone on speakerphone and I was in the shower. The hot water was the only thing that was giving me relief at this point, and having hot water on my back was just amazing. Around 12, the pain was getting more and more intense, so we called them again just to let them know. And then I heard churring outside, and I was like, oh, happy new year, even though I was like in all this pain and stuff. But that's a moment I think I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life, is just realizing that like we'd gone into a new year. It was all kind of slowly kicking off in the most unexpected way, but we were getting somewhere at least. I remember the midwife on the phone were just laughing, and she was like, oh, thank you, darling. And then she's like, right, this is what to do. And then we tried to sleep. I really did try to sleep, but obviously the cramping like sensations were getting more and more painful, and I was tracking them on an app called Freya, which I really recommend. Not only did it help me just track my contractions, it also, in the most soothing, calming voice, like when you were having a contraction, you press on the button and it will just help you breathe in for the count and out, and it was so soothing. And having that playing consistently during my contractions really helped me manage them very, very well. So yeah, worth every single penny that I paid. About like 3 a.m. was when the app started saying, right, they're getting consistent enough for you to go into hospital now if you feel like it's time for you to go. Obviously, everyone recommends that you wait for as long as you can. Around 3:15, we called and let them know we were coming in. My hospital bag had been packed, baby's hospital bag had been packed and ready by 38 weeks, and in the car in the boot. So it was just a case of putting a jacket on and letting my mum know that we were going to hospital. And I was like, inshallah, there's going to be a baby coming home like in the next day or two. We had briefly discussed like mum potentially coming in as birth partner, but I was like, no, I don't know how she's going to feel like seeing me in that much pain. I don't know how I'm going to be, and I just know that I definitely want Wakara there, but I don't know if I want to put my mum through that or be worrying about her whilst I'm in so much pain. So essentially we said, probably not, but we'll let you know. And she was fine with that as well. She didn't mind. Anyway, we went into hospital. I remember I had to wait a little bit to be seen, but I just continued the breathing. The app was going. I was having a couple of sweets that my mum had packed for me, which was really sweet of her. I'd put on this big pink dress, and then we were seen into a room where they were like, oh, just wait here and then we're going to check you over and see how far along you are. Once the midwife had left the room, I just suddenly felt really, really cold. And I said to Wakara, I was like, I know I've got my jacket on, but I'm freezing cold. I can't believe how cold I am. I was like, are you cold? He was like, no, I'm fine. So like, I just cannot get over how cold I am. Can you give me your jacket and put it on top of me? And can you also please ask them for a few blankets, because this room is freezing. I can't believe how cold it is. I don't know how I'm going to give birth feeling this cold. Midwife came back in and she was like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you putting your jacket on her? She's actually burning up and this is not what we need. And I was like, no, I'm not burning up. I'm freezing cold. Really, really, really need a blanket. Please, can you give me a blanket? She was like, let me just check how we're getting on. I think I was around 3 to 4 centimeters at that point. Then I obviously was hoping, because I had the natural induction method, that I would be allowed to go to the midwifery unit. But sadly, the head midwife had decided I was not, because I'd been in 4 times in the last month for checking the baby was fine. They classed that as reduced movements, which made me more of a high risk apparently, and I was gutted, absolutely gutted. Then at the same time I was so cold, I just couldn't think about that. I was just like, I really just need to warm up, because I know that labour is a tough process. I know giving birth is a tough process, and I don't want to be freezing cold. So they took me into the birthing room. That room had like a starry lamp in it, which was quite nice and like similar to the midwifery unit, and it had like a massive painting, but the painting or the mural or whatever was behind the bed. So me, the person giving birth, was not facing it, which I think is really silly. My birth partner could see the lovely design, and so could all the nurses and doctors, but I couldn't. Or what I could see was the sink and all these cupboards, and yeah, anyway, like maybe like an hour later, and I'm still freezing cold. Maybe because I was so preoccupied with the increasing pain and the coldness, I didn't clock that actually there's something pretty wrong here. I just didn't. And if he had clocked it at that point and he didn't let it on, I was definitely like, you know what, I would like to have some gas and air please, because the sensations are getting a lot stronger. He didn't know how I was going to be with gas and air. However, it definitely, for me personally, definitely helped. Did it take away the pain? No. Did it numb the pain? No. But it kind of like takes you away from the pain. That's what you want. The pain was like slowly increasing, but the gas and air was helping, and I was still able to talk, and I wasn't feeling sick, which was brilliant because I was scared. I have emetophobia, which is like when you're scared of vomiting, and I was scared that that could cause me to vomit, but you know, when you're in pain, you're in pain. So you're going to try and do what you can to manage that pain. The midwife that was in the room, she was swapping shifts with another midwife, and then one of the senior midwives comes in and she's like, right, I'm going to check how dilated you are. This is just before they gave me the gas and air, and I was at 5 centimetres, so I was pretty proud of myself. I got to 5 centimetres like unmedicated. I remember saying to a choir, I was like, okay, like 5 centimetres unmedicated, halfway there, so I'm going to take gas and air to about 8 centimetres I reckon, and then at 8 centimetres I'm going to ask them to put the injection in my thigh, and then inshallah going to birth the baby. You know, we were feeling really positive, even though I was still like feeling freezing cold, but I was like 5 centimetres, that really gave me like a boost of we've got this. The same doctor who had advised that I get induced came in to put a cannula in my hand. She tried this hand 3 times. Honestly, she was so bad at doing it, and it was so incredibly painful every time. I remember having the gas in it in this hand, and then I was just like, I wasn't watching her do it because needles, and no, I can't deal with that. But she was just like, oh, sorry, it's not working. I was just like, what the heck? So then they swapped the gas and air to the other hand, and I moved to one side and let her do it. And she tried twice in this hand, and it didn't work again. And then she was like, right, let me call someone else. And I was like, why would you try 5 times? Surely you try 2 times, and then you'd realise, actually, for whatever reason, I'm not good at this part of my job today, so let me get someone else in here, rather than treating this patient like a pin cushion and just, you know, this patient who's already in pain and is about to give birth, hopefully in the next day or so. Do you know what I mean? So I was pretty annoyed at that. Someone else came in and she got it done first time, and it was brilliant. And she was really kind, I remember that. And she was like, I'm really sorry that you were poked so many times, but yeah, hopefully that's in now. In the back of my mind, I knew that like something was not right here at all. They'd taken blood from me as well, but all I could focus on and think about was the end goal, which is meeting my baby ultimately, and the current goal, which is getting through the next like surge, the next wave of contraction. Still speaking to a guy at this point, and he was being amazing. He was a brilliant birth partner. He was like massaging my shoulders, like rubbing my leg, like whatever I needed essentially he was doing. He was passing me my Lucozade. I say about 5 a.m. at this point. And what they said, if everything progresses as it should do, you should roughly dilate about 1 centimetre an hour. So we calculated that technically baby girl should be here around 10 a.m. And I was like, you know what, now that I'm in the moment, I would like my mum to be here for when she bit more baby gets here, so I think around 8 a.m. or like if you get mum to come. And obviously at this point I've been in labour technically 3 centimetres dilated since 10 p.m. the day before. Hadn't slept up in this till this point, remember, and the last meal that I'd eaten was mum's lasagna, which is my favourite food, and that was around 8 p.m. I am pretty tired, but there is this like adrenaline that comes over you when you're in labour, because finally after 41 plus 5 days I was so close to meeting my baby. When you have waited that long, it's just like, wow. This thing in my hand and this drip situation wasn't great, but I was like trying to ignore it as much as I could. Time ticks on and the pain is getting worse and worse, and I'm really gripping the gas and air as hard as I can, and now the contractions are taking over my whole body, and I've never heard them being described like this, but obviously every woman experiences labour and birth differently, so I was like, okay,